friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing a VR to Saturnarium, who recently did a video sharing their tarot quirks. The quirky little habits, the quirky little things that they do when they're reading tarot. And it was a really great video. I had a lot of fun watching it, and it just got me thinking about the weird little things that I do when I read tarot. And I came up with a list, and so I'm going to share them with you. So these are my tarot quirks. Firstly is the way that I draw cards for my readings, and that is that I only read jumpers or cards that stick out. So I do not cut the deck into three and then just draw the cards for the spread off the top of a particular pile or anything like that. I keep shuffling overhand for each and every position until a card either jumps out or sort of sticks out in a particular way that catches my attention. And so in that way, I am literally asking the deck for a card for each individual position. And so drawing a spread can take me a little while. And originally I got into this habit because I was getting really in my head about when was the right time to stop shuffling, or if I was cutting the deck at the right spot. This method of just waiting for a card to present itself sort of removed all that guesswork for me and that second guessing myself. Instead, I just let the deck be very clear and tell me which card I need in that position. You can see this at work in my Tarot and Practice series, especially with the overhead shots if I'm doing a larger spread. You can see me shuffling and waiting for a card to jump out or to pop up or whatever. And that's just how I've been reading now for years, and I really like it, to the point where if a deck doesn't have card stock that is easy for me to overhand shuffle, like the black edition of the Children of Litha, for example, I don't end up enjoying using it. Number 2, I don't read clarification cards. I know drawing a clarifier card is a pretty common practice for a lot of people, and that is when a position maybe isn't super clear, you can ask for a second, sometimes even third card to provide a bit more information or to get specific on what the deck is trying to tell you. I've tried doing that a few times, but for me it just, I don't know, it's never actually clarified the situation, only confused it more. Instead, these days, if I'm unsure about the message of one particular position in a spread, often I'll just sort of let it be until I've read the other cards around it. And then when I come back to that spread that sort of stumped me in the beginning, usually it sort of clicks into place and makes more sense. If it's still not clicking, sometimes I just let it be, you know. Sometimes like the message or the meaning will emerge over the next few hours or few days. And if there's more than like 2 or 3 cards, you know, if this is a larger spread that I'm sort of not getting, I'm not understanding, then I usually sort of just scrap that spread. So I just take the spread for what it is. Sometimes at the end of the reading, if I have new questions, I might draw extra cards for those new questions, but I don't just draw a clarifier card in that more traditional practice way. Number 3, I never, ever, ever read for my relationship. I am in a long-term happy relationship, and I know myself. I know myself well enough to know that my relationship means so much to me that if I'm not in a good headspace, I can get a lot of unhealthy anxiety around it. And so I just know that if I were to draw a reading about my relationship, especially if there was some kind of outcome card, I would get weird. I would make it weird. And I suppose this ties to the idea of not asking questions you don't want to know the answer to. And for me, I just want to be in my relationship. I just want to experience it. I want to participate in it fully. I don't want to be second guessing it. I don't want to be trying to predict the outcome of it. I just want to be in it with Blair, not with the cards. To be clear, every now and then I might read for more, you know, like how I can better connect with Blair or how I can better communicate something. But I will never read about like the relationship itself and where it's going or anything like that, because ultimately I just don't think that's healthy for me. And so that is a very, very clear line in the sand that I drew for myself a long time ago and I have never crossed. Now back to my weird thing about how I draw cards for spreads. If a deck isn't giving me an answer, if cards aren't sort of sticking up or jumping out, then there's a sort of process that I go through. So at first, if I'm noticing I'm shuffling for quite a while and no cards are coming out in answer for the spread position, I ask very explicitly, can I have a clear answer, please? 9 times out of 10, a card will jump out of the deck almost immediately when that happens. And I think you've seen that happen in my Tarot and Practice videos sometimes. If I still get no jumpers or cards popping out, I will then stop shuffling, breathe for a moment, riffle shuffle 3 times, and ask my question or the spread position again, aloud and clearly. And then I'll return to overhand shuffling. Then usually I will get an answer. If there are still no cards coming up after that, I will stop. I will stop doing the reading and I'll have a good think about whether I'm actually asking the question I think I am, whether I actually want to know the answer to the question that I'm asking, whether my question is specific enough. I'll sort of like put the cards aside and maybe pull out my journal or just have a bit of a brainstorm, a bit of a think, a bit of reflection on what I'm asking, why I'm asking it. And either I will kind of reassess my question and reframe it and come back to the deck, or sometimes I just get the feeling that I'm not supposed to know this, I don't really want to know this, or maybe even that the deck that I'm using isn't the right deck for the question. The next quirk is also sort of connected to how I draw cards for spreads, but it's sort of the opposite situation of the last quirk. This one is if a whole bunch of cards come flying out in answer to my question. So if 2, sometimes even 3, depending how I'm feeling, cards pop out very clearly in answer to a question, then I usually will read those cards. But if 3, 4, 5, sometimes even more cards jump out, then I take that as an indication that my mind is jumbled, that maybe I'm not concentrating or I'm not being clear enough, that I'm distracted, you know? So it's almost like the deck is responding to my distractibility and my non-specificity by throwing up a bunch of different answers. And so my process is sort of similar, where I will stop, I will do a few riffle shuffles, and I'll just try and breathe and get much more clear, much more focused on what I'm asking. And then I will ask for a clear answer, a specific answer. Now, as for the questions that I ask, I do a lot of readings for myself, but I have a very clear rule in my head that I will not ask the same question unless there has been a big enough shift or change in the situation to warrant a new spread. So I don't really have like a timeline or a time limit on when I can ask a question again or anything like that. It more is to do with the nature of the situation and whether something has changed or not. If there has been no change in the situation, then I don't feel like there's a need for me to re-ask the question. But equally, like an hour after finishing the spread, there could be like a massive shift or change in the situation that may warrant a new reading. So I'm not so much focused on timelines or rules around like 3 months, 6 months, a week, whatever it is. I'm much more focused on whether something has changed, whether the answer will be different, or if I need more information. If the answers to those things are no, then I don't need to do another reading. My next quirk is almost like an anti-quirk because I'm just so edgy, and that is that I don't really use any props or like candles or crystals or anything in my readings these days. I think one of the major changes in my tarot practice from when I first kind of got back into tarot 6 or 7 or 8 years ago at this point and now is that my tarot practice is so stripped back. I don't light candles, I don't do some big meditation, I don't kind of go through the rigmarole of ritual or performance or anything like that. And that's not to say that those things are not valid or valuable for the people who do use those things. I think they can be definitely very helpful in setting the tone and kind of creating a safe, sacred space for the reading. For me, I've just found the simpler, the better. And so I literally just like will kind of clear space on my desk in the middle of whatever I'm doing and just draw cards on my table. There's no fanfare, there's no ritual, it's just me and the cards. And for me, someone who's a perfectionist and an overthinker, I find sort of limiting that barrier to entry as low as it can go just means that I'm reaching for my cards much more often and I'm enjoying the time that I'm spending with them, and I'm actually engaged in the messages and in the spread a whole lot more than I am thinking about all the extra bits. That's just a personal preference and what works for me. Next is that a lot of the readings I do are very sort of like psycho-spiritual based. They're much more like personal development-y, mental healthy, wellness oriented. But from time to time, I either intentionally do or it just pops up something that leans a little more predictive. And although I do share a lot of my readings online, whether that's through Tarot and Practice or sometimes on Instagram or whatever it is, I do not really like to share predictive readings online or with anyone really until after the situation has sort of resolved. I suppose it's a little bit like the witch's pyramid and the idea to remain silent around like your magical workings and stuff. And even though I don't know that I super intellectually believe in all of that, I've just found personally whether I am doing some kind of working or with my more predictive readings, when I start to just like spread that around, I don't know, it's almost like it thins it out and it becomes more, I don't know, open to influence and change. It's like it invites or allows the influence of others more significantly than if I had just kept it to myself. I don't know, it's just a very like a feelings thing rather than an intellectual thing. So when I do readings that lean more predictive, whether like I said intentional or sometimes tarot just does that, it just pops up, I don't usually share them until after it's resolved. And that's not to say that I share all of my readings with everybody all the time. It's more just like, if I am going to share it, either it will be in confidence with one person with very explicitly, like, the clear message that this is still a thing that's happening. So, I don't want their commentary or their influence, or it will be after the fact when the situation has resolved and like I'm sort of talking about it in retrospect. So this next one is something I do when I've sort of had a dud reading or I'm struggling to connect with a deck. Or maybe even it's just been a little while since I last used it and it sort of feels like the energy around the deck is a bit stagnant or stale. And that is, I put it back in order. I guess this is kind of my version of cleansing. To me, I think of it as sort of like resetting your computer. It clears the cache, it empties out the outdated, unnecessary, stale, data and information, I guess. And I don't do it that often. I honestly don't remember the last time I did it. But if I'm really struggling with a deck, especially a deck that I know I've had good readings from before and it's just we're not clicking and maybe it has been a while since I last worked with it, I'll put it back in order, and for me that's like hitting the reset button. And that is also why I like to put my decks back in order before I send them on if I'm selling the deck or giving it away. I mean, partly I think it's just kind of, I don't know, like etiquette, like sort of putting something in the right order. But for me, it also just like, it doesn't remove all of the energy and the experience the deck has like earned over time, but it does just clear off that sort of superficial layer of, I don't know, like unnecessary, not long-term required information. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's sort of how I feel about it. So that's another thing that I do. I really wish I could come up with one more so I could make this a nice top 10 list for you, but those are the 9 that came to mind when I was watching Saturnarium's video, which will be linked in the description box below. So definitely go check out their video after you've done watching this one. And thank you so much to Saturnarium for inspiring this video. I really enjoyed watching yours, and I would love to hear in the comments below if you have any weird, quirky little things that you do when you read tarot. As always, a big thank you goes to my patrons over on Patreon, especially to Livia, Lynette Brown, Laurie, and Ian Yitzhak, who are my high tier patrons and who go above and beyond in their generous support of me and my channel. I really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. I will talk to you in the comments below and in the next video. Until then, so much love. Bye.